You're watching The Whitney Reynolds Show. Our first guest was a very active Ironman competitor until he developed staph infection in his knee that ended his competitive racing. Depressed and in rehab, he turned his life around. Let's welcome out Brian. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Whitney.
So staph infection does not go very well with being an athlete and a runner.
No. So 2008, I was training for another Ironman, and I had fluid on my knee, and they kept draining it and taking the test levels, but they, for some reason, didn't diagnose it as being staph. And so this went on like 10 different times, and it was just really frustrating because it's not very fun getting your knee drained. No. Until finally, after like 3 or 4 weeks, some other doctor, an internist, somehow saw my records, and they called me up and said, "You need to have emergency surgery tomorrow because you have a staph infection." So I went and did that, and then after that, I had to have antibiotics in my arm for 6 weeks for about an hour and a half a day, and so it was just kind of a miserable experience.
And with that, when you hear you have something wrong, whether it's, staph infection or something less or something more, it still is this like, okay, how is my body going to be changed? And then it goes from there to how mentally is this going to impact me?
For sure. I think, whenever we, suffer injuries or tough things, it just, automatically makes us kind of go into fear mode or kind of worry mode of like, what is my life going to be like after this? And it was that way for me because, I've been racing for over 20 years and a lot of triathlons and Ironman.
And was racing kind of like a therapy for you? Like, I know some people that run say that's not just for my physical, it's for my mental health.
Sure. For me, those long training rides and runs were kind of a form of meditation.
So to hear it was over.
Well, yeah, potentially over. Absolutely. And, I'd had a knee injury a long time before, which actually kind of pointed me in the direction of triathlon. And so having to go through that again, it was depressing. And, yeah.
And so you're depressed, you're kind of thinking, okay, is this a life change? How did you get to the point where not only did you totally heal mentally, but it changed like kind of your whole direction?
It's interesting. That whole year was a lot of upheaval for me with the knee injury, as well as starting to kind of feel out of like I'd outgrown my job. I was running my family's business. And so I felt like I had this gift inside of me that wanted to come out, although I didn't know what it was. And I think having the knee injury, just kind of hitting that semi-rock bottom there for a little bit, really forced me to just say, you know what? I'm going to go talk to my dad and tell him that I don't want to do this anymore, even though I really had no idea what was going to be next. So I think they kind of played hand in hand.
So your rock bottom moment was really this moment of like self-discovery of I need more. And what happened after that shift?
Well, as my knee started healing, one day I was still feeling out of balance overall. And so I sat down and I just felt like, why don't you write down 5 things that will help keep you in balance during this period? And so I did that. And I wrote them on a piece of paper, stuck it in my wallet, and every day thereafter I was kind of feeling out of whack. I'd make sure that I was doing those 5 things.
What were some of the 5? I'm so curious.
That's right. Well, some of them are really basic, but just make sure I was getting enough sleep, make sure that I was drinking enough water, which is kind of sneaky because we really do need to drink more than we think.
Yeah.
Make sure that I was getting some daily exercise. And right then, since I was struggling with this, it was basically just walking then. Make sure that I was allowing myself to have some alone time every day. And because I'm actually kind of an introvert and I need to refill my cup probably more than most.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know. And then the last was to make sure that I was being creative every day. And back then, being creative was playing guitar. And
so your creative actually took off from there and you did a whole shift. How did you develop where you were going to go next? Because like you said, not only did you have the knee injury, but then you also said, I need to switch my whole life around. And that's like an obstacle in itself of like a career shift, a total almost like reinvention of who you are.
Totally. It was definitely a process. And I think I just let my intuition kind of guide that process. So after I wrote those 5 things down on a piece of paper and they helped me, my intuition was just screaming, expand the list and write a book. And I was not a writer, but I just kind of honored that. And it poured through me over the course of a couple months. And so I wrote it and self-published it. And it came out. It didn't sell very well initially because I didn't know how to market a book then. Plus, I was very fearful of speaking in front of people to market it. Then it won a couple of awards randomly, which really shocked me. So I knew that if I wanted to share its message, I needed to overcome my fear of speaking.
And the message was in the book. What was the message?
Well, just life balance, the importance of life balance. And I basically wrote down a whole bunch of different things that we can do to help ourselves maintain life balance.
And really, life balance, I feel like, is the biggest obstacle. Like, personally, when people ask, how do you do it? I'm always just like, it depends on the day.
Well, balance is a moving target, so every day is going to be a little bit different, absolutely. But if the more self-aware that we become, then we know what throws us out of balance and what we can do to get us back into that flow. So we all go through the roller coaster, but if we have some things that we know that will help us kind of right the ship, then it makes it easier.
What was your hardest part about that obstacle in your life? Because I feel like there's a few more that have come your way, and kind of you have a story of resilience. And what was really a difficult thing about that? And what made you mind shift it into being positive?
Well, I think when I was 3, I told my mom I was put here to inspire people. And after I wrote my book, she reminded me of that. And so I think probably the toughest thing for me during that period was I knew that I wanted to share the message, and so I had to just dig in and start stepping out of my comfort zone in a lot of different ways. And so I did a couple community college speech classes. I did Toastmasters for about a year. I hired someone to co-host an internet radio show with me. I created an interactive workshop around the book, and I thought I was being clever by making it interactive, so I wouldn't have to speak the whole time. But I found out it worked really well that way. And I also took an acting class, just intuitively feeling like these things would help me progress. And as I kept doing those things, other opportunities started happening, and I just intuitively said yes, sometimes, with a gulp.
Yeah.
I was invited to do a TEDx about 4 or 5 years ago, and I had not planned on doing one, but somebody offered it to me, and I just gulped and said yes. And
I like
had
that
3 months to go.
Gulp and
yeah, I had 3 months to do it, but I knew with, I just knew that it would work out. I just trusted intuitively that I would figure out what I wanted to talk about, and I would, and I just practiced.
Wow. And now you are an actor. You're like all the time. You do acting stuff. You've written many more books, which again, you weren't an author before all this.
No.
And it's kind of been this gulp, say yes has gotten you over these obstacles.
Yeah, I just follow my intuition and just let synchronicity connect me with, people and opportunities, and just, I'm not quite sure. I feel like I know where it's headed, hopefully on a little bit bigger scale, so I can share, I don't really try to tell anybody what to do. I just try to share what's worked for me.
And then for all of our viewers at home that are facing an obstacle in their life, what advice would you have for them?
Boy, just take care of yourself first, try to become more self-aware with, different things that you can do to stay in life balance, and just heal yourself, however you need to be healed, whatever that means. And also, I always try to tell people, just know that you're enough, just being who you are and what you have to work with. Because if you can get to that place, everything else just falls into place.
Oh, I love that. You are enough. That is some wise words. And thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
For more information on today's show, visit whitneyreynolds.com.